Namaskar. I welcome you all to yet another episode of Jai Ho. Thank you so much for all the warm response for all our past episodes. We have had some really great speakers like Major Gaurav Arya, Ratan Shardaji, Savio Rodrigues, Amit Bagaria, and Dr. M.R. Venkateshji. Today, we bring to you the global perspective, yet another dynamic personality who has not just been a successful entrepreneur with 37 and still counting patents to his name, and he is also the founder of the very renowned portal P Gurus that I'm sure most of you must have watched and read. And he is a treasure house of information, having authored so many bestsellers, starting with NDTV Frauds and C Company, Who Painted My Money White, and now with the upcoming book, Who Painted My State Purple. This is none other than Sree Iyer ji of P Gurus, and I'm sure that this is going to be a very informative and insightful session. So don't go anywhere, stay on till the very end, and I'm sure that you will all go back inspired. So without any further delay, let's speak with Sree Iyer ji.
Terrorism is here to stay, and we have to be very careful. It could be India next. I hope it won't happen, but there are dangers.
To some of these hangouts that we do on P-Gurus is something rotten and that needs to be fixed. And until you fix that, India will only keep on suffering like this, lurching from crisis to crisis.
Significant politician whose name jumps out, and that person's picture is on the cover. No surprises there. No brownies for guessing the name right. It is Mr.
Have now woken up to this. These are machinations. Miss Annie Raja just thinks that by speaking loudly and mouthing verbal diarrhea that everybody is going to listen to her. First of all, madam, raising your voice.
The latter. My take on this whole thing is that if India can create some confidence in the foreign markets, that they can feel that.
Jai Ho! Welcome to yet another fantastic, fabulous, interesting episode of Jai Ho. And a very warm welcome to you, Sree Iyer ji, to our channel
Namaskar.
and to Jai Ho. And I'm sure
Namaskar.
that most of our viewers must have already watched your interview, the one that I had taken on offline in pre-corona times. It was an interactive live session for your book release of Who Painted My Money White. And here we are again, but this time online. And I request every one of my viewers to hang on till the very end because we have a very interesting lineup of questions. I'm sure that every one of you will be interested to hear. Once again, a very good morning, good evening, good afternoon, because there are people from all across the globe here. The questions are going to be across the continents. I want to ask you very firstly, why is it that people as well as companies, they behave differently when they're in different countries? Like say Twitter, Facebook, they behave with so much arrogance in India, I feel. So do you think that they can afford that much arrogance in the US as well? And another part of the question would be that is it that these companies assume some kind of legal immunity just because of the country of their origin?
So, first of all, namaskar to all your viewers. Jai Ho is a very beautiful program, and in your capable hands, it is reaching great heights. Wish you all the best. Now, as far as the social media platforms are concerned, I just want to give you some basic things in that when these were formed, there weren't any serious laws defining how they should behave in the United States. I mean, I'm talking about the growth years. So what they are supposed to be regulated under is called as a Section 230 of the Information Act of United States. Now, when the 2020 elections happened and then Trump lost and Trump made a few statements that Twitter called as bad, and eventually they just temporarily banned him and then permanently banned him after that. And the temporary ban came when he was still the president. And Facebook also followed suit and said that, they are banning Trump. They in fact went back, I think, a few months ago and reviewed it, and then they're still allowing it to continue. So basically, Trump, who was the president of the United States, he himself doesn't have a voice now on two of the three more popular platforms, Twitter and Facebook. Now, you know that Google doesn't have the equivalent of a Twitter or a Facebook page. They tried something called Google Plus, hasn't really taken on, so they've just stayed with YouTube and essentially being a search engine and so on and so forth. So if, this kind of fate can befall a sitting president of the country, remember he was the president when they first banned, Twitter banned, you can imagine the plight of smaller countries or less significant in their eyes, how they would behave. However, I must tell you that as much as it appears to be arrogance, they will try and tell you that, look, in our platform, we are getting so many things that are being negative about some individuals, which is what is forcing us to do things in a certain way. Now, why does that happen? So you must know that now with, I think, 3 billion or something Facebook members, and I think Twitter has much lesser, 600 million or something, it is physically impossible for anyone to sit and look at every tweet or every Facebook post that comes across and filter it or stop it before it goes live. It's impossible. So what they do is they use something called as software algorithms. And these algorithms are programmed to look for some specific words. And in doing that, what happens is there is a first level of filter that the algorithm does. And after that, if there is a complaint from the person saying, look, you are misinterpreting what I said, I demand a review, then a manual person looks at that and then takes a call, a more qualitative call on whether to allow that or to stop that. Now, if you think that the algorithm is perfect, no, it is not. It can be gamed, and it has been gamed, and it is not something that is unique to India. If you look at the press, in whether it is United States or United Kingdom or perhaps even many of the Western world, they all tend to be left-leaning. For some reason, they feel that there are some who are being denied their right to existence, to prosperity, to a good life, what have you. This left-leaning mindset has been there for a long time. This took growth perhaps around 1910 or 1915, and it was at its peak following the ascendancy of Lenin to occupy or grab power in what was Russia at that time. And that kind of made everybody romantic, saying that, oh, there is ultra-rich people who are taking money away and the rest are being made to starve. So tax them and distribute the wealth. And if you notice, Jawaharlal Nehru was from that period. He went to college in Oxford when being left was considered the chic thing to do. Chic as in CHIC. I might not sound right. The cool thing to do. And these things were takeaways, and these were all romantics who didn't know the ground realities. Sardar Patel, in my opinion, on the other hand, would have been a much better prime minister, which would have laid India down the path of progress, and India would have been still, I would say that India would have been a developed country by now. He knew what the country needed. Unfortunately, for reasons that I won't go into now, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi chose Jawaharlal Nehru as the president of the Congress Party in 1946, and that person went on to become the first prime minister of the country. And there are some very interesting revelations on the relationship between those two in M.O. Mathai's books. I urge our readers to get their hands on. It's available on Google, many of those things. For example, one thing that I found very interesting was he said that every Congress resolution, from the time Gandhi became the voice of the party till 1947, every resolution was written by Nehru and was edited by Gandhi. It did not matter who was the president of the party. Now, when Bose comes along in 38 and 39 and he tries to change a few things, he's extremely popular, and these two felt the ground slipping from underneath their feet. That's, in my opinion, the reason why Gandhi said that Bose should not be the president anymore. And Bose is a strong individual, a strong character. He understood what was needed, and that's why he parted company and, Azad Hind Force, Indian National Army, all those things followed after that. So anyway, I'm sorry, I'm digressing. So getting back to this point here, the ecosystem that is covering the news, whether it is India or United Kingdom or the United States, or even Western liberal countries like all the Lithuania, Denmark, Holland, Norway, Germany, France, many of them tend to be very liberal and left-leaning. However, the thought, you can personally be whatever you want, but that personal preferences should not show up in what you are reporting as news. News is news. News is what happened.
Yes.
Unfortunately, this line, people are not able to clearly discern that. Like, for example, you could be a Hindu, a Muslim, a Christian, or a Jew, but that part of your life comes only when you are in your prayer room. Once you are out of that, then you are an individual. So these kind of things, these lines have gotten blurred. And unfortunately, people from all walks of life are doing this. And it's very, very sad, because you really need to understand who you are. And that self-awareness is something that is not, is lacking in many people. They need to really introspect about what is it that I am in the world for. If you can find the answer to that question, I mean, that is really the moment when you start living your life. Anyway, we'll talk more about this in the questions to come. So this Section 230, Trump wanted to change that. He wanted to change that in the United States so that he could bring the Facebooks and the Twitters of the world to more control, to make them more accountable. Unfortunately, they somehow managed to see his term through. And now they have buddies in the current administration. In fact, many of the Facebook, Twitter, Google executives, in fact, Amazon also, are in the Biden administration in several important posts. So I think that these things are going to continue for some more time. However, because people are getting turned away from this, if there is a compelling alternative, I'm sure people will take that up. If the question is now, the responsibility, the onus is on us to provide that compelling alternative, which for my sake, I hope, is the truth, the carrier of truth, not something that gives you a left or a right or a red or a blue perspective, but the truth. The truth is absolute. This part needs to be discovered again, mostly in the media. This is my hope. I hope I answered your question, because this question kind of also helps explain why Ravi Shankar Prasad ji had for 1 hour his system taken away, most likely because some algorithm just triggered on what he said, some word that he may have said in his tweet would have triggered that. And then what happens is it immediately turns it off. And then somebody must have gotten a call saying, look, you just essentially made the Minister of Law of India very, very unhappy. What is it that you found wrong here? Now, also we have to keep in mind that, remember I told you there are rules that are being defined for these algorithms, and then they implement these rules. The people who are framing these rules, those people, if they knowingly did some mischief, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, everybody, they need to name these people and they need to get rid of them. I don't know if you remember, Infosys did exactly that. They found that one of their employees, while he was at work, was writing some nonsense. Once it became evident, they essentially fired that person. Naming, shaming, everything happened. It's important, because if you consider yourself, these are all trillion-dollar capitalization companies. They have a lot of money sloshing about. And some of the engineers make ungodly sums of money. I'm telling you, I wish I was working as a 25-year-old now in one of these companies. I'll be making money hand over fist and having fun at it. Unfortunately, they may not want any right-wing or centrist views in their ranks, because what I'm also hearing is the few people who are more balanced and they want to question some of these assumptions, they get shouted down. So the fake narrative is in full flow. The average workforce in these companies, the average age of the workforce, every company has an average age. That happens because there is a growth phase when the company grows very quickly. That's when they hire a lot of people. So that is in the low 30s or late 20s for these companies, and they tend to be very, very left-leaning, and unfortunately they are still unable to differentiate their preferences from what their job demands of them, and for this, go ahead.
No, sorry, please.
So this is something that the managers in these companies need to look at, and they have to show them the mirror, saying that you may be whatever you want. You show that thing at the time of elections, but by doing what you did here, you made a mistake. And you also have to remember that the type of people who are doing the manual curation, assuming that after putting the rules and also checking the subjectivity, most of them are actually in India. And many of them are also left-leaning journalists, because in a previous life they were that. And when these people came looking for hands, they tended to hire some of these people. So they have this bias built in. And this is not a big concern for Google unless or Facebook or Twitter, unless they make a horrible mistake. And then the followers start leaving it in droves. See, even WhatsApp, when they came up with this new rule change, we had a little bit of churn. People left, but that didn't, they didn't realize in like a 50% drop in WhatsApp membership. People still are using WhatsApp. They don't like it. They grumble.
Yes.
They continue to use it. You see, so that is where you have to make a decision that by continuing with somebody who says my way or the highway, you are actually making them bolder. The next time around, it might be much harsher. You are being slow cooked.
Yes, very true.
You are being slow cooked in water. That water is slowly becoming hotter, and because it is rising slowly, you don't feel that you are being slow cooked. Unfortunately, this is the thing that many of us find ourselves in.
Yeah, but what I find appalling is that these companies, they are not just going by their ideology or age group and the algorithms, and it's not just that. The arrogance that I was talking about is about not actually respecting the law of the land. There were so many other issues that the government of India wanted to implement those things. Like there has to obviously be some kind of a check on the source of some misinformation. So I think the government is very much justified in such demands. But if these companies, they refuse to respect the law of the land, I think that is nothing less than arrogance.
I think not everybody is saying that, right? It's only Twitter who's dragging its feet. The others seem to be more in compliance. And Twitter is saying, no, we can't do this. Whatever reason it is, they are saying, we will not be able to do this. It is difficult. They're dragging their feet, essentially. Now, this is a game of stare, Rajalakshmi ji. And the first one who blinks loses. And but look at Indian government's record. They had established that one of the TV channels, my favorite, NDTV, had shown tendencies of anti-national behavior. It was proven that they supplied some information that helped the enemy force, and that resulted in some deaths in the Indian army. It was a black and white proof that was established that it was because of the NDTV reporting that this happened, and that they should be taken off air for one day. Could the government enforce it? No. After supplying so much information, in fact, I've written 2 books on NDTV frauds. All that has happened is the whistleblowers have been fired. And they are staring at lawsuits. They are staring at the possibility of spending the rest of their lives without pensions. And so this is the internal system, the deep state of India, that is actually, kowtowing to these people. And who knows, maybe they have some sinecure appointments of children of babus in significant positions in India who are now Like, for example, I'll tell you, Big Four, they say that the reason Big Four is listened to with such reverence and respect in South Block and North Block is because many of the children are actually employed in these Big Four firms. And this is true of Chinese leadership also.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, Chinese seem to know when to flip the bird to the Big Four, whereas India seems to be still in that subservial mode. India really needs to understand that you have a huge market. Even if it is not 5 trillion, it's going to be 5 trillion soon. The progress is not going to be stopped. Whether India is at 3 trillion or 4 trillion, it will get to 5 trillion, after which it is unstoppable. You cannot stop it. And for this to happen, India needs to be much more aggressive in its economic policies. I mean, we have an expert whose word they are not listening to, or maybe they're listening to a little bit late, but timing is everything in these things. And I think India again has missed the boat on that. And for that, the people have to suffer. Now, for example, crude prices are going up. Why? Because Biden said that United States will stop production of crude from shale. And, even in Biden's term, in fact, it was Biden, not Biden, Obama, even in Obama's term, the shale production was on in full force. Because Obama realized that he had what you call as a safety valve in a pressure cooker. If the prices threaten to accelerate too much, because there are cartels, OPEC is a cartel, and they can always rope in the other players like Russia and other people, and they say, okay, let's all make more money. And then they start controlling the global output. So the Obama administration found out that by producing shale and then by regulating how much they wanted to use for themselves and how much they wanted to export, they could essentially keep the global crude prices under check. Now, enter Biden administration, the first thing he does is complete ban on all these shale things. In fact, a couple of states like the North Dakota and South Dakota and Texas, they are in complete shambles, even though money is being given to people, but that money is going to run out. The US government cannot indefinitely put money in people's hands. I mean, it's now 16, 17 months. March 2020 was when this pandemic hit us. So it's now 17 months. And I think there are about, if I have to guess, best case per individual, everybody got like $10,000. These are the ones who are at the lowest strata of economic society, lowest strata of the society. And but that money is only going to go so much. They will need money and they will need jobs. So this presidency has been a bit of a disappointment there. And we have to wait and see how this goes. So to get back to the main question that you asked, this arrogance part, they are trying to see how far they can push their limit. And Indian government needs to be steadfast and it needs to start cracking the whip. But again, I said, I'm not very hopeful because they could not stop their own India operated channel for a meager 24 hours. They need to show some spine. Unless they do that, what Twitter, some new company will also come and walk all over the Indian government. So this is an abject lesson that once you make up your mind, you got to follow through with that. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, very true. Again, that brings me to another question about, since you were speaking about a lot of companies. So I wanted to ask you about what is the difference you feel in the ease of doing business in the US and in India? And what kind of a shift do you see, especially after this push of Atmanirbhar Bharat?
One of the things that India is so used to is the power that the bureaucracy wields over the citizens. And they are drunk on that. They must have seen Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister many, many times because there are a couple of terms that get bandied about. One is called CMG. You know what CMG means? Call me God. So this is how bureaucrats address to themselves. Then there is a higher level called as GCMG. What that means is God calls me God. So this is the kind of power that the bureaucrats in India are drunk with. And unless you puncture their balloons, unfortunately, the puncturing that is happening to the honest officers. I can't repeat this enough. Whether it is Sanjay Kumar Srivastava or Jitendra Kumar Ojha, and there are many more in the line now they are going to get only emboldened. So people for doing their jobs are being penalized. And that is not a way for the society to progress forward. As far as ease of doing business is concerned, a few things have been made easier. However, once you settle in, the government gets constant, gives constant reminders. They keep auditing your, annual reports again and again, keep asking you questions from 4 years, 5 years ago. I mean, these are all pinpricks. In the initial years of any company, it's going to incur more losses than gain. And whenever they make some money, you have to let it go. I mean, unless somebody is going to see that they're going to make a profit, why would they come to the country? So the Atmanirbharta is, a reflection. It'll improve once the foreign companies say, now it is easier for us to do business in India. I don't think India has reached that point yet. I mean, if you look at what came in the budget, they said that many NRIs can now start their own companies and they only have to pay 15% corporate taxes. Everything sounded great, but I still haven't seen any rules on how to go about applying for it. March, April, May, June, 4 months have gone. You can't wait for that long to draft rules. You have to be acting on it like almost immediately. In fact, if I were the minister, if I were the government, I would have had the rules ready, make the statement, and flip the switch on the website so anybody can go and download it. That is how a government should function.
Okay, so you think that there is too much strictness maybe in trying to keep some kind of a tab in spite of the ease of doing business?
Yeah, a lot of pinpricks keep happening, and it is all needless because, see, when the tax returns are submitted to the income tax, they are themselves, signing off on it. Then why is another officer coming and looking over the, work of previous officer and then saying, no, you have to pay here, you have to pay there. And some of the things that the government does is also totally not called for. Retrogressive, it's called retrogressive, tax, changing rules back in time. You can change the rule, but you have to do it forward. You can't go back and change it. And that retrospective change of rules, that doesn't help. Like the Vodafone case, for example. Whatever happened. You know that because your ship is full of leaks. So then don't do this retrospective legislation that doesn't help anyone. And again, where is the company going to seek redressal from the courts? Courts are, extremely slow. So why would anybody in their right mind want to come and do business in India? You see, this is the thing, especially when you look and compare in Dubai, it is 0% corporate tax, 0% personal tax, and you can be in Dubai only for 1 day in a 6-month window to satisfy the requirement of having a company operate out of Dubai. Okay, so whoever wants to do whatever, Dubai is only 2.5 hours by plane to India. It may be 4, 5, or 8, 10 hours by ship. They can finish the product there, and then all they have to do is they have to bribe the customs guys to get their product in, assuming that it's a physical product. But if it is something else, it's very, very easy. Software companies don't have to come to India. They would not. Why would they? I'm getting 0% corporate tax, 0% personal tax. The money I make from the company, the profits I make from the company is all mine. So why would I want to come and establish a company in India? So some of these things, the financial ministry department have to think it through. Look around you. Look at how Singapore and Dubai have stolen a march. At least for once, show some earnestness and say, this is what is good for the country. So I can go on, Rajalakshmi ji. I am surprised that despite all these hurdles, India is still, moving forward. See, if you do some of these things and then carry through with your promises, India will be a 5 trillion. Why 5? It will not stop there. It will just keep going. But the point there is that you need to show that willingness that if you just file this one form, you're done. And that's how it is in the United States. I have everything, all my payroll, accounting, tax forms, everything for P-Gurus, for example. It's all done using one account for which I pay $4 per employee per month. It's so small an amount. I don't need an accountant. I don't need a tax expert. You see, everything is done automatically. Okay. So that is the kind of ease of business that India needs to usher in. You don't need these chartered accountants to tell you where to go and, eke out profit. Make it very straightforward. Okay. So that's where things stand. Ease of business, long way to go. This is where when you make promise, if you don't carry through and if you don't say, okay, then I'll start publishing how many new companies have been formed since that budget speech of Nirmala Sitharaman. Can she hold a press conference? In April, I had so many new companies come in and incorporate in India. May so much, and this is the capital they are bringing in. They don't say that. All they look at is FPI is high, FII is high. See, a lot of that stuff is politicians ill-earned money coming back to India because they're getting more bolder. They're thinking this government is not going to catch. Leave the politicians, it's not even catching a mouse. So that is the confidence, and that's why the money is coming back in, especially in light of the fact that Biden administration, in a rare gesture, is actually cracking down on tax havens now. So when they crack down, they also freeze the money in those tax havens. So now the money that is frozen that is lying in Cayman Islands may not be that easy. So what has happening? They're all bringing the money back in to India. So that is why you are seeing so much foreign exchange reserves. But this is money that can easily go out also because it comes in via participatory notes. Unless they completely ban the participatory notes, they can't stop the money from taking flight in case something goes wrong. I think there are many problems, but the most important thing that India needs to do is take one thing and do it right. Give the confidence to people that, yes, I took up this challenge. I wanted to have foreign investment, foreign companies come and set up shop. I did this, I laid out the platform, and then these are the rules. As soon as people did these things, I allowed them to come in, set up shop. This is the result of that. And these are all like large shifts. It's going to take time before you're going to see the results. But this needs to be done. And you saw that one company that makes iPhones, there was arson and looting. And then they found out that it was politically motivated. And those people were caught, but then again, it goes through the court system. Things take their own pace of, operation. Somewhere you have to break this thing and say that I took this thing, I made it clear. Because see, one such instance is going to stop 10 other companies from coming into India.
Yes, very true.
So yeah, when you're competing for foreign investments, you are competing with the likes of Dubai, Singapore, Vietnam, all of whom have far lesser regulations than India, and the cost arbitrage is not going to work in their favor because Vietnam is probably cheaper than India. So what benefit do you have? In fact, many of the transcription services that India used to have, they have lost it to countries like Vietnam and Philippines. They don't have that anymore. So India needs to find its way up the food chain to more valuable things, and for that again you have to make things easier. Somehow, somewhere, the messaging is getting lost.
Okay. I have always admired how you have so much deep knowledge about so many different issues. Another thing that I wanted to ask you was about your observation about the world's oldest democracy versus the world's largest democracy. And you have observed the elections. And in fact, your upcoming book that is Who Painted My State Purple? So I want to know your take about how these two countries, the world's oldest democracy and the world's largest democracy, how they compare in terms of the very essence of the democracy and also in the election process.
I stand corrected. I think US is one of the oldest democracies because one can make the argument that Britain was a democracy even before US came along. And one can also stretch that and say, look, India was the oldest democracy because Bharata, after whom the country is named, he did not automatically make one of his sons his successor because he felt that none of his children merited that. And something else happened anyway. So one of the oldest democracies versus the largest democracies, yes. One good thing that India got right, is the way it conducts its elections. Electronic voting machine with printer attached trail, so that voter knows that the party that he voted for is what, the vote was cast. He can see that vote drop. They can know that, okay, that the process is transparent, free, and fair. You take a case of United States, the elections, the conduct of elections is left to the states, and then sometimes the states leave it to the counties to make their own decisions as to which machine they want to use for holding the elections. Do they want to do it manually? Because each county has its own budget. They have their own constraints on how much money they can spend for holding elections. So with all these things, there's a lot of room for mischief. Mischief by America's adversaries, who can, if they can clearly and carefully study the process of elections in the United States, they can game it. And my book of fiction, Who Painted My State Purple, is an example of that. I wrote what I saw in 2020 elections, and I tried to connect the dots in a fictional way. And that is the result of this book. And this book is going to be available online as well as in paperback very, very soon. So I hope I come back to Mumbai and take part in another Q&A session with you and have a lot of fun in the process. So, here is one situation where the largest democracy can show the way for one of the oldest democracies. And I'm hoping that will happen.
Yes, I'm sure too. And one interesting thing that I saw in your book was that there are always a lot of hints. And another question that I have for you is, how much of it is the truth and how much of it is actual fiction?
Well, there is a fair amount of fiction there, and I can't put a percentage on both, but it is one of those exercises that I let my viewers indulge in, readers indulge in, to try and match a fictional character described in my book with a real life character. And it's an interesting exercise, and people come up with their own observations that this person matches this person's character, and so on and so forth. So this is a type of novel called Romana Claw, and this essentially fictionalizes politicians, political thrillers, and things like that. And it's been around for a while. I'm trying to bring it back into vogue because it seems interesting when you have things moving at such breakneck speed and you want to try and make sense of it. That's what I've tried to do in my book.
Okay. And there are a lot of Chinese characters in the book, like an equal amount of, say, maybe as many as there are, true American characters. I'm not talking about Chinese American, I'm talking about Chinese characters. So what exactly are they doing in the book?
Well, this book traverses the whole world. You have many places. The action is in many places. Primarily, the action is in United States and in China. And essentially, it's an assumption here that one country which wants to unseat US as the most powerful country in the world has a vested interest. And the Chinese are known to be very careful planners. And whatever I've depicted in the book, it is extremely possible. These are the kind of things that they are very good at. And again, this is still a book of fiction. And not every event described there might have happened. It might not have happened. Also, you probably saw this interesting news bit. This book was written a few months ago. And I think last week, there was stories about a very senior ranking member of the MSS defecting with his daughter to the United States. 2 or 3 days later, the Chinese posted a presidium meeting, saying that on 28 June, he's very much in China. But did it happen? Did it not happen? We don't know, because the US also is very tight-lipped about it. These are all intelligence-related matters. They don't want to show their hand. And what happens is afterwards, when events start playing out, that's when you realize that something like this must have happened. Otherwise, these things. So you have to be able to connect the dots. You will not be able to connect every dot. You might not be able to get everything correct. But, mota, 20,000 foot level, you can get the things right. And I believe that's what I've tried to do in my book.
Yeah, that is exactly why I was trying to ask you, because I guess that this has definitely something to do with the Chinese angle in it. And your books, they always go ahead to be such bestsellers that everybody is definitely looking forward to knowing, something a little more about the book. Obviously, they will buy it and they will read it, that is for sure. But then if you can give some giveaways now during this.
Sure. So far I have released 3 books under the Who Painted title. One is the White, Who Painted My Money White. Then the Red book, Who Painted My Lust Red. And now Who Painted My State Purple. So in every one of these books, I have tried to take one technology and drill it to its depth, to try and let people they are not only getting a story, but they're also getting a lot of gyan about how things happen, how things get laundered. That is what was in the Who Painted My Money White. How money can be counterfeited easily, and once counterfeited, how it can be dispersed without getting on the radar of the investigative agencies. That's what I did. In my second book, I showed about I tried to answer the question, why is it that IPL gets hosted in Dubai? What is that magic thing that Dubai has that everybody wants to host their games there? Now you saw, last year, 2020 was in Dubai. Then Dr. Swami, myself, a lot of us said, look, Dubai is not the place to be. You should be holding it in India, especially in a post-recovery period when you're having all these challenges. And they had a part of the season there, but now they are going to finish it in where? Dubai. Not only that, the World T20 Championship that was supposed to have been hosted by India is now going to be hosted where? Dubai. So this story, the Red Book, goes into depths on what really happens in Dubai. And again, there are lots of characters. I've tried to demystify many of that stuff. I don't know if you've had a chance to read my Red Book. If you follow cricket, Bollywood, and politics, I'm sure you follow politics because you are on so many TV shows. So you should read this book. In fact, anybody who follows these 3 things, you should read the book. And you will start seeing a lot more than what you're seeing with your naked eye. You can start connecting the dots much better. As far as the latest book is concerned, what I have tried to do is, while I'm telling a story, I'm also showing the tricks that electronic voting machine manufacturers have put in their machines, which can be exploited. I'm not saying they are being exploited. It's always a can be exploited. And how it can be exploited, what happens. And this is where I explain that in the Purple Book. But whenever I'm talking about this book, I'm always advocating that you have a new technology called blockchain. It's been proven to be solid because Bitcoin has not been hacked. Bitcoin, is a well-known thing. It is now people are paying $40,000 for one coin. And that technology can be used to hold elections. How would you hold elections with that? I want to do 2 things. One is that the election is fair. And the second is that every citizen of a country should be able to cast his vote, his or her vote. It should be 100%. So to do that, then instead of the ballot box being somewhere and you going to it, what if the ballot box comes to your smartphone? If you can cast your vote and you can vote any number of times on the same election until the last vote that you cast, which becomes your final vote. Because you might be swayed by somebody's speech here, somebody's actions there. So we want to give you that flexibility. Today you vote this person, tomorrow, no, I don't like this one. I like this person because I find some of his ideas are more interesting to me. So these kind of flexibilities can be done by using a very simple software, blockchain-based voting system. And I'm hoping that looking at what all has happened in the 2020 elections, that the United States finally decides to do that. By the way, it is not happening. It'll take a few years before they'll come to that. Churchill once famously said, the Americans can be expected to do the right thing after they have tried everything else.
Okay.
So that is the hope. And I'm sure when you read this, you will start, walking with pride, because at least an Indian can say, my elections are much more transparent and fair.
Yes, that is for sure, because anybody outside of the USA, all that they were doing was, most of it was speculation, and even then it was very confusing. Even for people within the US, everybody was giving a different version, and there definitely seems to be a total lack of transparency there. And I'm very proud that we, in spite of the fact that we are such a huge population, that at least we have this thing sorted out, and in spite of all the bad press that keeps coming in about the elections, but I think that this is the most transparent one that we could actually get into. So and if in the future, whatever you're saying, the blockchain technology, if that also could be a part of some election processes in these democracies, then I think it will be a huge shift in the way the world functions. Moving towards the concluding part of this talk, I see you as somebody who has inspired a lot of youngsters, because you have 37 patents. 37, am I right? Or is the number
It's
more
growing
now?
up, but it's slowly growing. It's slowly growing.
Okay, 37 and counting. With so many patents, you already are an inspiration to every youngster. You have achieved what a lot of people would definitely have something as a dream. But then you went beyond that to start something like P Gurus, which I would say is nothing less than a movement, and you are doing such fabulous research in every field possible, whether it may be geopolitics or politics, or about internal, external security, technology, about so many issues. So I want to know what exactly is this movement that I call P Gurus? What exactly inspired you, and what would be your message to all these youngsters watching you, everybody watching you? What would be your message?
If I have to answer it in one word, it would be Paramacharya, Kanchi's Shankar, Kanchi Mutt's head, Sri Chandrasekhar Saraswati. He, I have met him only a few times, and never like going and talking to him or anything, but looking from a distance. And even that was when I was a child. But my mom and my other uncles and others have said so many things about him, because we used to be a family, fairly well-to-do family in a small town called Sholingar, which is on the border of Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh today. And when he used to do Parivaram is Parivar, right? When a Kanchi head moves, the Parivaram consists of hundreds of people, and they bring their own utensils to cook. They make their own, bricks, with dung. I don't know what it's called. I think I'm forgetting the name. But they make their own thing. They make their own milk. They make their own ghee. They make their own butter. So they can set camp in only some houses which have the wherewithal of a big place to be able to house so many people. Clear, set of cows which can give them milk, and so on and so forth. So he used to come and stay for 45 days at a time. It's called Mandalam. Mandalam is 45 days. So whenever they used to move, they would set the base camp, and it will be there for 45 days, because they have to go through a series of pujas and other things. And those stories, I'm sure somewhere something happened, and I said that now I think I've done enough in startups and technology. I need to start looking at something else that I think I'm blessed with. I could speak, read, write many languages, and that was not being used when in my current job. I just needed to be able to speak, eat, and think in English. So I said, why not take it up? And then I found that, I could write. And one thing led to the other. But then I'm starting to realize that anybody who becomes close with me, once we start exchanging, where, what, everything goes back to Paramacharya. Almost all of the people that I know, who I consider my really, really close group, about a half a dozen to a dozen, all of us, we've all come from the same fount. So he has a role for us. That's how I look at it. I was talking to Padma Bhushan awardee Dr. Nagaswamy, 91 years old. He just wrote a new book, and this is a fascinating book in its own right, Dharma Yoga. What he says here is that he goes back to 200 BCE, before Common Era, and he shows us a coin issued by a Bactrian king, and the lettering is Greek in one side, Prakriti on the other side, and it's got a swastik symbol here in that. So people who don't even understand what a swastik means, suasti, good living, that's what the swastik sign is. And the way the sign was derived also has been talked about in many, the 7 big stars that we follow. If you look at a year cycle, and if you try to, draw a locus of that, you end up with a swastika. So these are all things that, somehow I said, like, there is a hidden portion of my upbringing, my culture, that I haven't really tapped into, and I'm slowly opening that door. So anyway, to finish the conversation with the Padma Bhushan awardee Dr. Nagaswamy, 91 years old, still sprite, still writing. In fact, I just published a new post of his on P-Gurus. And when we talk, he said, what is it that we think? And he's also another Paramacharya Sishya. I mean, he knew him for over 40, 50 years. Whenever he used to go visit Kanchi, and then all the people around, volunteers around, will say, okay, next 4 hours, Mahapariva will not talk to anybody else. He is 91 years young, sprite. He's busy, very active. He has just contributed an article to P-Gurus about Kannagi. And one of the things that he used to tell me was, your purpose and my purpose as to how long we are going to stay on earth is not determined by us. Mahapariva has determined that this is what you're going to do. Don't look left or right. You will get a message, just do it. And he used to hilariously relate that he knew him for over 50, 60 years. And anytime he would go to talk to Mahapariva, the people around him will say, okay, the next 4 hours, he's not going to listen to anybody else. This is it. Next 4 hours are taken for this. And the other interesting thing is, Mahapariva would go without food for days on end. And by the time they finish discussing, it will be like late into night, 10, 10:30, 11. So he would tell Dr. Nagaswamy, I believe, go to the kitchen. There may be some plantain fruit available. That's all the best I can do for you. I mean, this is, when you're talking about pursuit of knowledge, they are like towering intellectuals who knew so much. So I'm very happy and proud that, Dr. Nagaswamy still considers me as somebody that he needs to bounce ideas with. And I do what little I can. I'm an ignorant in front of him. At the same time, sometimes, one thing here, one thing there, it shapes your thoughts and, ideologies. So I'm very happy that this is what I want to tell all of us. Spirituality, don't get taken in by, saying that there is no God. Atheism is not cool. There is something above. I am a living proof of that. I can tell you how many people have made friends from out of nowhere. And then suddenly, after some time, we discover that we all follow this particular thing. That we are all members of Kanchi Math. We are believers of, Mahapariva. I mean, he left Earth 26, 27 years ago. Still, that aura is there. He's still looking at us. He's taking care of us. He's directing us. He's guiding us. And I'm having the best time of my life. I don't know how many more, active years I have in front of me. But whatever I have left, I'm trying to make the best use of it. That's why you're seeing so many books. In fact, I have 2 more books in the pipeline. One is done. The second one is 70% done. And once I have this streamlined and through, I'm going to devote all my efforts to trying to bring those books, because those are just as important in terms of what they convey. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much. This has really been such an insightful discussion. You are a living example of a combination of spirituality and technology, and both of it comes together, and you have not just lived the dream that most people aspire, but then you are also an example of how a person can actually pursue the truth and knowledge and live so much beyond that dream that most people aspire. Now, I'm sure that everyone knows what is the reason your company is called P-Gurus. That has something to do with the guru that has spiritually guided you. Is that how it is?
Again, he decided the name. That's all I can tell you. Now I can only explain this and saying this is what it is. So a lot of things have happened, Rajalakshmi, that I can't explain now, but they've all been very successful. And I just thank God and thank anyone who has been my well-wisher. So for you, it's for because of your protsahan, your encouragement that I have become what I have become. And I hope to do the same for many more years to come. Thank you.
Yes, I'm sure, and I wish that you come out with more and more such books and such treasures of information. You call them fiction, but they're not really fiction. I pray that you write more and more such books, and I hope that you will come back on this channel because there is no limit to how many issues we can speak about. But there definitely is a lack of time. So then that is why we have to wind up right now. But the conversation will definitely continue. So with that, I say Jai Ho, and I'm sure that all the viewers are feeling much more inspired and hopeful that they can also make a lot more contribution with whatever skill they have, whatever talents they have. So make the best use of it, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. A pleasure being on your channel.
Jai Ho! I'm sure that all of you are not just inspired and motivated, but you have also realized that when we do something with a strong purpose, then there is this divine force that leads us to the right people, binds us with them, and takes us ahead on this journey. So stay positive in the mind, be strong mentally, have a strong purpose, and I'm sure each and every one of us can be a strong warrior in making Bharat Mata a Vishwa Guru of our dreams. Bharat Mata Sada hi Jai Ho. Jai Ho.